How's it going, everybody? Hope everybody's doing good. Tonight I'm not going to be working on anything. Kind of cool out, raining a little bit. I just so happen to have these three different machines in the garage and thought I'd talk about them a little bit. I'm going to kind of call this a 250cc class comparison on these, what I guess you'd call them older machines now. First thing I'll mention though is that this particular Arctic Cat here is a 300. It is absolutely identical in every way to a 250 as far as dimensions. A 250 two-wheel drive doesn't have the black mud flaps on the fenders here, but wheelbase width, tire size might change just a little. It might be a little smaller on the 250 two-wheel drive versus the 300 four-wheel, but you're looking at basically the same machine as a 250. This one is a 99 model. This one here is a 98 model 220 Bayou. Y'all seen the repair videos on that. This one I've had for about 3 years probably. I've had it a while. I use it whenever I need a four-wheeler for something. And then this one here, you will either have already seen a video on it or it will be upcoming pretty soon. This is a 98 Suzuki Quadrunner 250 four-wheel drive. The stickers are gone off the side. But so basically what you got is a 98 250 Suzuki, a 98 220 Bayou, which they later changed to a 250. But that's the class that it would be competing in. And then this is a 99 300. Sitting in place of what should be a 250 Arctic Cat, but like I said, they're the same mostly. So first thing you'll notice, I guess, is the size difference. It's pretty easy to tell the Bayou is definitely the smallest machine. It's the narrowest. It's got the smallest racks. It sits about the same height, I would say. And as far as ground clearance, they're all similar. The Bayou probably is maybe the tallest in the front, at least with no weight on it. And then if we come around the side here, I've got the rear tires lined up on all of them. And so this is kind of where you can get an idea on the overall length of the machines. And wheelbase, which is center to center on your tires, you can tell the Arctic Cat is the longest, and then the Suzuki slightly longer than the Bayou. Not a whole lot though. These two are definitely the more compact, nimble feeling machines. Then we'll walk around to the rear, just to show that the tires are pretty evenly lined up. If anything, the Arctic Cat might be back a little bit from the others. And of course, you can look up the specs on all these online very easily, but you don't always get to see them put right together. And so in the rear, totally different suspensions on all these machines, honestly. So this machine is double A arm front and rear. It's independent rear suspension, independent front. The 220 Bayou is solid rear axle, but the Bayou has kind of a floating rear axle. Most swing arms don't allow body roll. They're rigidly connected in a way that the body does not roll without the wheel wanting to come off the ground. The Bayou has an articulating rear suspension, which allows the wheels to move, independent from the body. Personally, I don't like it because I'm a big guy, and when I make a hard turn on this thing, even going slow, it picks the one front wheel up and just packs it in the air because the body roll is kind of severe. Like I said, I'm a big guy, and it's the narrowest of these machines. It's really probably made for somebody a whole lot lighter than me. When I say I'm a big guy, I'm about 6'3" and over 300 pounds. So I'm a pretty hard test on a little machine like that. And then the Suzuki, like I said, which is not all that much larger than the Bayou, it has single A-arm rear suspension on it, which was super advanced for its time. Pretty crazy, really, because they beat Polaris and everybody to that game, and pretty wild. I'm just a fan of these machines. The features they had way back when is just pretty cool to me. I mean, they put a lot of thought into that machine, and I'll get into that here in just a minute. We'll go around to the front and check out the front suspensions. Like I said, the Arctic Cat is double A-arm front. Just pretty much like your modern machines these days. The Bayou is a single A-arm front, just like the Suzuki is a single A-arm in the rear. And as the suspension articulates, your camber changes a lot on a single A-arm setup. It has no choice because it's directly connected to the arm, and the arm works in an arch, so as it does, your tire will curve in and out. Sorry, I know that's pretty crude example, but you can see how the tires are leaning in on the Suzuki when you put, on the Bayou. So as you put weight on it, they'll level up, and then if you overload it, pretty much they'll go the opposite direction. Then over here at the Suzuki, it does have double A-arm front suspension, just like most modern machines. The Suzuki was introduced in '87, the 250 Quadrunner. That was its first year. The Bayou was '88. The Arctic Cat was '98. It was a little later to the game. And of course, it'd be cool to have a Recon and a Timberwolf and those style of machines here too, but I'm just working what I've got. So, you know, I would call the Bayou the smallest and most nimble of the three. And as far as power, I would say the Bayou is the quickest by a fair amount. It's just, I think it's so light. And it's a fairly spunky little engine. I mean, you know, shoot, somebody that weighs 150 pounds less than me, you know, you can have a lot of fun on that machine. The Suzuki and the Arctic Cat run about the same because they use the same engine. Arctic Cat uses the Suzuki Quadrunner and King Quad engines in their 250 and 300 machines. So that's one reason I like the Arctic Cat 300 is pretty good. And then of course the Suzuki would be the next size up from the Bayou on a 250 class machine. It's not all that much bigger. It is a fair amount longer once you include the racks and everything. And to me, it feels a fair amount heavier, but this one is also four-wheel drive. Two-wheel drive will be probably pretty comparable to the Bayou in weight, but you know, the Suzuki, it's just got a little bit nicer racks on it. And really the back rack on the Bayou is pretty good size, but the front one's a little on the small side and it's not square. Then the Arctic Cat is the largest of the bunch by quite a bit. It's not a lot wider than the Suzuki probably, especially in the rear where the Suzuki has the mud flaps. But the length is quite a bit different, quite a bit longer. As far as features, the Bayou really is pretty bare bones. It's 5-speed with reverse. There's no gauges, just a neutral and reverse light. You've got independent front and rear brakes. They're all drum. and swing arm rear suspension, which there's nothing wrong with swing arm at all. They're been used for a long time and still a good setup. I just don't like how these allow the body roll. And the Suzuki, in my opinion, has the most features out of all these machines, even being designed back in '88. And they ran these up until, I want to say 2002 or something. They had a long run. But these machines have a speedometer with a trip meter. I've never seen one of these with the cluster fogged up on it or with moisture in it. I mean, and they light up at night. They're just in the blue. I like it. And then got a little green neutral light, reverse light, a 3-position key switch. This is your headlights. This is just normal running. That's off. And this is, I guess, what I always thought was cool about these. You've got high range, low range, super low range. And you have 5 speeds in each range. So that gives you 15 forward gears. Depending on what you want to do, you've got a choice of somewhere in the range of 15 gears. So for me, super low is really only hardcore pulling something that you're only going slow with, or just needing maximum traction and power at a lower speed. Super low enables the use of differential lock. You can't use differential lock unless you're in super low. You can modify that to use in any range. But that leads us over to this selector, which is 2-wheel drive in the rear position, 4-wheel drive in the middle position, and differential lock in the front. And then this is your reverse. Just pull it back like that once you're in neutral, and push it back up when you're ready to click back up in first. And then these you just push down and push forward, and without rolling the machine, it's not going to want to go, but it'll just click up into low, and you push down again and it clicks up into super low. I just think it took other manufacturers, it took Honda and Yamaha and Kawasaki. Polaris was one of the only ones that had selectable 4-wheel drive from the get-go. But man, Suzuki was way ahead of their time. Polaris, I think, had a 4-wheel drive, I want to say in about '88 probably, 250. It was a 2-stroke and belt-driven automatic. But they were selectable 2- and 4-wheel, and when you put a Polaris in 4-wheel, both front wheels are capable of pulling. It's what they call their all-wheel drive system. It works good. I like the Polaris all-wheel drive too. So Polaris and Suzuki were totally raking everybody else over the coals in terms of, your selector for 2- and 4-wheel drive. But you can run this machine in 2, 4, or diff lock, just depending on your conditions. I don't know. I want to say it was 2003 or 4 before Honda put their Trax lock system on a 450 Foreman. And they've never had a 250 4-wheel drive. Suzuki did have a 250 4-wheel drive. Can't remember. I think it was called the Timberwolf. They're a neat little machine, but they're pretty bare bones as well. But I mean, nothing wrong with them. But then this machine also has your 2 standard handbrakes and your foot brake. And then, of course, we already talked about the suspension. Each machine has 2 headlights. Suzuki and the Arctic Cat just have 1 tail light. The Bayou has 2. They're all foot shift. It's just standard foot shifter as well as the Bayou. But the Suzuki is really loaded with features as far as, being able to play with your gearing or your 2-wheel, 4-wheel diff lock settings. Just a neat machine. for its time. The Arctic Cat was later to the game, of course. They use a complete Suzuki driveline besides the axle shafts and things, but the front diff and the engine, probably not the center drive shaft, it's probably longer, but front diff and engine and transaxle are all the same as a Suzuki. These have a little more basic looking cluster, but basically does the same thing. I like the Suzuki cluster better. Arctic Cat did tell you what position, what gear you were in, and it's pretty common that not all these work anymore, but anyway, it might have it in a gear that it's not on, but anyway, neutral light, reverse. I don't know if the oil lights work on these or not. Temperature light, high beam, and then 1 through 5. So that's kind of nice. You know, some people, especially newer people, might have a hard time keeping track of what gear they're in. It never was really a problem for me, but then here's your forward and reverse. You just pull that back. I'll have to roll it a little bit. It locks back to reverse, and you push it back forward to go forward again. Got a standard foot brake for the rear, but it's got full disc brakes, and this lever works all 4 wheels. And I should also mention that the Suzuki is drum brake front and rear. So this is the only machine with disc brakes, but like I said, it was a later release model. And Arctic Cat only ever used disc brakes. I don't think they ever had any drums on any of their ATVs. But, you know, there's just my opinion riding these things. Like I said, I'm a big guy, not necessarily their intended market probably. The Bayou is definitely my least favorite to ride. It feels more tipsy, more body roll. The power's fun. It's super easy to ride wheelies on. You know, that part's fun, but it's just it's too small for me to want to spend much time on. The Suzuki would be second, and it's amazing how much more stable it feels to me than the Bayou. That's just my opinion. They feel heavier in the front, and they just feel more planted. They don't roll as bad in the turns. Not near as bad in my opinion. They handle my weight a lot better. The seat feels nicer to me. Leg room's probably about the same, but I like the feel of the Suzuki quite a bit better than the Bayou. And then for me, being a heavy guy, this is probably the most comfortable machine for me to spend all day on. The Arctic Cat does have full floorboards. The other two don't. They just have pegs with kind of a rear section on their floor. Kind of a little rear floorboard with just pegs. But the Arctic Cat has full floorboards. I'm not a huge fan of the rocker shifter on the Arctic Cat. You know, I grew up on a Honda and got used to the regular just toe shifter up and down with your toe. This is a heel toe shifter, more like what's on some motorcycles, and it's just not my favorite, but it works fine. I did forget to mention that the high, low, and super low on the Arctic Cat are here. And I guess I got really sidetracked. This is the 4-wheel drive in and out on the 300 Arctic Cat. You just push or pull this in depending on what position you want. There's the diagram. And it's interesting to note that even though they use the front differential from Suzuki, the same as the King Quad would have had in it, it's got the position for diff lock on the differential, but Arctic Cat chose not to use that. So with some modification to the shift cable, you can get diff lock out of these machines, but I don't know why they didn't choose to use it unless it was just going to add a little more to the cost. I'm not sure what their reasoning was, but it lacks a diff lock, which is one thing the Suzuki has that none of the others do. And of course the Bayou was only ever offered in 2-wheel drive, so no competition there. But so my opinion of these machines, if you've got a kid or you just so happen to be for riding out in the trails and stuff like that, I would say the Bayou is really best suited for a younger person. Plenty of power for a kid, 13, 14, however old. I'd say, of course you're supposed to follow the manufacturer's age stuff, so definitely follow what they tell you, not me. But I would say Bayou's better suited for a younger person or an adult that's maybe you're just farting around your property and not trying to ride very hard or don't really have many big heels. It's so light in the front. It just it feels light coming up hills and things, and I don't like the way it feels for me. But I think for a kid it'd be perfect. The Suzuki, not super roomy for an adult, or a bigger adult, but I don't feel too cramped on one. And I love the features. It feels pretty good in the front, way more planted and way less body roll than the Bayou. So to me, a younger person or an adult, either one could be pretty comfortable on this thing. It's not as spunky as the Bayou, but plenty of power to do whatever you want, and the gearing is just, you can, you'll never run out of power. As far as, you may have to slow way down, but you won't run out of power. You can just keep down gearing. Once you get into super low, it's really crawling, but it's, it'll spin the tires on anything. And then the Arctic Cat fits me the best. Really, for me, the race would be between the Arctic Cat and the Suzuki. I really like the handle or the gas tank controls on the Suzuki. The Arctic Cat controls aren't quite as nice, and the Suzuki build quality seems to be a little better, but these hold up really well. I can't really just shock bushings. Honestly, seem to be the biggest issue on these. The shock bushings just are junk, but the A-arm bushings seem to hold up pretty well. So I can't really complain about the Arctic Cat. They're good machines, and they used a strong drive line with the Suzuki engines. And but this is the largest machine. This machine is the same size physically as a 500 Arctic Cat. So from 250 cc to 500, and these body styles are the same. Nowadays, I think Kawasaki and I don't know, Arctic Cat, I think, and probably a few others have a 250 or 300 cc machine, but they're Chinese built, whereas these two machines here are Japanese built, and the Arctic Cat is actually made in the USA, at least according to the sticker. And these newer machines they'll never be as tough as these. That's my opinion. They're they're belt driven, which is not a death warrant for me. And they're capable. I'm not knocking them, but in my opinion, good luck buying a 250 these days that will will live with any of these in the same environments, but especially to be capable as that little Suzuki that was designed and built in '87. You know, they're not in the same league, I don't think, as far as dependability, and they're just a cheaper built product, and I think that's why manufacturers probably went to them. They're cheaper built, and they are simple, I guess, but they're just not, I don't think, that's my opinion, I don't think in the long haul they'll hold up like these machines will. But I think I'm going to cut the video off here. Just wanted to cover the basics. I know I've rambled quite a bit. I hope this was interesting to somebody. Appreciate y'all watching. I'll catch you next time.